In a noisy world we pause and hear. A wiser path is becoming clear. Peaceful voices.
Welcome, my friends. Thank you for joining us. Today I'm very honored to welcome Stephanie Van Hook, the director for the Metta Center for Nonviolence, the host of Nonviolence Radio Hour. It's a wonderful podcast worth finding. The creator of a board game, Cosmic Peace Force. The writer of a young adult or children's book about Gandhi with amazing artwork from a Colombian artist who I ended up going down a rabbit hole and appreciating. And I'm just so happy to have you here. Happy Independence Day. Interdependence Day.
Thank you. And this is Tessa.
Tessa.
She wants to be
our fabulous co-host.
Yeah. There you go, honey. There you go. Yeah, thanks so much. Yeah, I have a lot of fun creating resources for nonviolence, and I've been working with the Metta Center for about 17 years. I found them 17 years ago and got immediately involved transcribing Michael's Peace and Conflict Studies lectures, and time-stamping certain key ideas in them. And I really got hooked, learned all of Michael's stories, and connected with Michael, and he started mentoring me in this work and in this pursuit, I'd say, this pursuit. And I moved down to California. I was living in Portland, Oregon at the time. And I moved down to California to volunteer at Metta, and because it just felt like the place I was supposed to be, and it has proved to be the case that I feel like I'm supposed to be here, and I really enjoy working with Michael Nagler, who you interviewed some months ago, I guess.
Yeah, a wonderful mentor. We all feel really grateful that you're willing to be part of him passing the torch, lighting the candle.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Yep. It's part of the work.
So I like to ask people about in this moment, because for activists, for many of us, oftentimes we feel a loss of hope. There's a sense of resignation or difficulty. And so just in case we only get people watching the first part of this, I want to pass on some of that light of hope, of something that gives you a sense of the accomplishments and the growth of our community, and that it actually does work if we keep putting the time in. Is there something that inspires you or that you would like to let people know about this practice of nonviolence?
Well, goodness. Yeah, I think it's hard for me not to feel hopeful, because I'm aware of all of the good work that's taking place in nonviolence. I get my news, directly from listservs of organizations or people who are out there doing the work, and every single day I hear about a new organization or a new resource or a new effort, new form of activism emerging. So that brings me endless hope, in a way that if I were only reading mainstream news or getting my news from social media, I don't think I would necessarily encounter the stories of people working on a new paradigm and working in nonviolence directly. So that makes me feel really hopeful. And I guess also, I do go through periods of being, I think, overwhelmed by what's happening. I wouldn't say I lose hope ever, but definitely overwhelmed and need to take breaks or pause or do more self-care so that my brain can even process the whole picture and what my role in it is. But I guess always thinking about what's my role here, what can I do brings me hope, because hope is something active. And gosh, what else? And then what also brings me hope is just my deep awareness and understanding that human nature is positive and nonviolent, and that having that vision and understanding and knowing kind of shifts any despair about who we are, and only makes me ask, well, how do we bring that out? How do we help people see this? So a good example is, every single day we encounter nonviolent acts and acts of self um, self-suffering and courage and bravery, for the sake of the interconnected whole in which we live. And I think a really good example recently was of a man in Florida. His child fell off a Disney cruise ship, and he immediately jumped in to save his child. So first of all, like, that seems pretty natural, doesn't it? Like, your child falls off a ship in the ocean. What are you going to do? You're probably going to jump in. Like, let that sink in a minute. It's not like if our nature was violent, that kid fell off, we might just be like, oh, well, there goes another human being. Let them drown. Right. That's not, but I bring this up because it just seems like a no-brainer. Your child falls off a boat, you jump in, or, someone else who feels that they can, does it. And that's what other people on the boat said, like, I would have absolutely have done that. That's what you do. There's no question. But that was not seen. We don't understand those stories in a way that they're telling the bigger story, that's actually our nature. So it's really exciting when I see that out there, and that it doesn't quite yet click for us to understand that that's who we are. But they're out. Those stories, we encounter them every single day. When you see people walking dogs or cats, or I don't know what else, their ferret, around town, they're acting with compassion, right? They don't have to take that animal out.
That's right.
So compassion is part of who we are. And I think the main thing we need to do is to work on our skills of conflict resolution, de-escalation, conflict intervention. We have to work on our skills around conflict, because that gets scary. We have behaviors around conflict because we aren't trained enough to understand what we can do, how we can take this understanding of who we are. And when someone, breaks, challenges our sense of who we are, how we can respond also with compassion and care, from a place of deeper wisdom. So I'm really also quite passionate about that, helping people to both see who we are and have the skills to be able to uphold that on a regular basis.
That's right. And it is a skill.
Yeah, there's a lot of skills involved. I mean, a lot of it can come as, there's this two sides, so a lot of it comes naturally, as like this man just naturally jumping off the ship. That wasn't, but, or, somebody and seeing a bomb in a local marketplace and throwing their body on top of children with them, that's instinct. And like self-sacrificing instinct. But there are a lot of skills that can bring us to that place of better understanding. Yeah, that we can work things out. There's no conflict out there that can't be resolved using nonviolent means.
I agree. Yeah. And the Metta Center is part of training future activists for more skillful means, for skillful methods to take our instinct, our instinctual need to protect and to love, which, when twisted, turns into a lot of the very sad behavior that we see. But then when directed in the right fashion, and usually in cooperation, becomes a very powerful movement of love and healing. And so down below, I'll connect links to training opportunities for people to learn how to cultivate this side of themselves, so that that instinct to jump in the water uh, is still there, of course. We get to cultivate and bring out that deeper quality of compassion that's so inherent to us. It's part of what we are. But if you don't know how to swim, then maybe it's not the best action. And there's a next option. So training yourself to become more capable to express that compassionate, powerful instinct to protect and to guide our future is, I feel like, a wonderful thing that the Metta Center is taking part of. And so again, thank you for doing that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah, no, we need institutions and spaces in our culture where we get to return to our basic human nature and think about it and transform ourselves, and also have community and have a bit of a break from everyone saying that's not who you are, to be able to connect with other like-minded folks who are trying to find that kind of heart support for this work. It takes community, it takes connection with others too. You can't do it by yourself. It's a lot harder.
It's a lot harder, and that's what is part of it. It becomes part of this funnel of despair that we look at the media, which tells us it's impossible. We look at our own personal capacity, and I can't struggle against this. I'm so small. I might as well do nothing or
Yeah.
give up entirely. But collectively, we are it is part of a human qualities as well to link arms and to move together, and to allow that part of our nature to come out as well, is also healing for ourselves, as much as being compassionate and loving is healing. And so, yeah, the skill of learning how to link arms, and the part of what makes me hopeful is this the social media and the stuff that we're using to destroy ourselves, the 10,000 screens that are pointing at us every day. Part of the possibility within that is that it makes it easier for us to connect, to talk to each other, to relate, to plan, and to help each other work toward our own best interests instead of our societal downfall. The possibility is to heal as well. And so Tessa knows exactly where to stand. Gosh, thank you for that. So yeah, to recap what I heard, you are tapped into sources that are letting you know about the efforts of good people doing good things in the world to promote nonviolence, rather than looking at the qualities of media and the information out there that is almost designed to shut people down. And at the same time, you're also involved in training yourself and training others to cultivate those qualities within us that are most healing. And those things give you hope, because you see the possibility within that, and then you get to see your own actions bear fruit. Does that sound right?
I would say that it's a lot messier than the way than that sounds. I'd say that it's
It's a summary. It's a summary.
yeah. Yeah, I think that it's nonviolence. It's we are surrounded by screens and news, and the way that in the U.S. at least the administration's flooding the zone with just one thing after another, and then working, living in a local community and being a pedestrian and cyclist and having cars, almost hitting you every day. It's not that you don't experience, not that I don't experience frustration, anger. um, it's more that I have this awareness in myself that that's not who I am, and that I can never fully go down a path of a violent action that would do harm to somebody, especially intentionally, that having the intention. But it's not that those feelings don't come up. So that's the material to work with, right? Is and it's not like, oh, there I go, I blew it this time. It's just, living in a kind of timeless space of noticing where the work needs to be, and as having the willingness to work in myself in these places that I still get triggered.
Yeah.
Because I mean, I think in the end, I still do look at media news, but I look at it with different eyes. I look for what's really happening beneath the surface. I look for where is media that aligns more with my political persuasion, using tools and tactics that don't support bridging efforts, which is a lot. There's a lot of humiliation and shaming that and a lot of uh, lack of restorative beliefs in the media, especially media that would otherwise agree with certain political visions that I would have. But unfortunately, that's not. I also believe in a world with deep restorative practice, and I don't see enough of that, I think, in any kind of media. And that's why we have to just, I think, Gandhi's disciples, Narayan Desai wrote a little handbook on nonviolence, and in it he said a satyagrahi can't join a political party, because once you do, you're already uh, accepting of any means that party uses, or whatever platform they want to take. But we have to be able to have the wiggle room to uphold human principles and nonviolent principles, even in the midst of our anger at political decisions.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, the capacity to follow that quality of deeper nature, which involves spontaneity and the ability to respond to a situation with your own internal capacities, rather than following in lockstep with an externalized idea or your interpretation of somebody else's goal. Or yeah, I feel like that's a very important thing in Taoism. The part of the idea, for instance, in Buddhism, more well known, we talk about the idea of enlightenment or that kind of thing. It's this process that we're cultivating. And for the Taoist nature, one of the names for that is just becoming a genuine person, 真人, this idea of you're just being a real human. And it's a wonderful term, because it's not about trying to do something to add something onto yourself. You're kind of wiping away all of that which is in the way of our genuine nature. And that means that you are the one that has the capacity, when enacting from this deeper space of compassion and love and a deeper level of awareness of what's needed in that moment, as long as you're able to be your true self, then that means you have that satyagaha, that power that comes from deep compassion and love, that soul force, and it just comes out in everything that you do. And then healing occurs, and the society shifts, as long as everyone's able to grow from that space on the inside, which can never be externalized or written down, although people try to do it.
It's beautiful. I followed a spiritual path for quite some time, and lived in a meditation community. And I don't think I was thriving in that space or community in the end. So as much talk as there was that we are being, we are discovering who we really are through these practices, the level of control in the organization was such that it was in direct conflict with these ideals. And so I think what I'm learning as someone leaving a community that um, and just living in, not in a communal setting. I live with a friend, we have pets, which we weren't allowed to have at the meditation center. And, um, you know, I participate in life around me in a different way. And I participate in my community in a different way than when I was on this one specific path to just toward enlightenment kind of thing. Um, and I guess I just want to say that when people start with spiritual practice and they start with nonviolence, they get really excited and start trying to change everyone else around them. Like I discovered this, and now you don't. You need to change,
Yeah.
not me. And I think that, yeah, and it gets really, this. It's understandable because you find space where you feel is precious and sacred. Um, but when we try to then immediately turn and change everybody else, um, that's a delusion. So I think the more comfortable we become with ourselves, that we could be put in any situation at all, from any form of, yeah, we can be put in any situation and still have access to who we are.
Mhm.
um, that's a sign that we're, I think, maturing in these practices of spiritual practice and the practice of nonviolence. Um, that we don't rely on that. Things get more complex, and we don't have to hold ourselves to some kind of unrealistic standard. And we also don't have to like overly focus on changing other people.
That would be amazing.
I it's Yeah, and I took a lot of time. I think I've gone through all these things. Like when I first started, discovering nonviolence as a thing, I as a practice, changing my own behaviors, but then wanting to see, certain people do certain things, and like in my family, or um, and I just sort of slowly learned to let other people be who they are too. And so I think that's where my spiritual life and spiritual practice comes into all this work now, is just seeing things as they are, seeing people as they are.
Mhm.
And and I think in starting with that basic level of acceptance of self and others, then a lot of conflict resolution can take place, because you can actually talk about the conflict, um, when you're not trying to change somebody, trying to
That's the
change.
only time.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the trying to be compassionate and loving without acceptance isn't particularly effective.
Yeah.
Gosh.
Yeah. It's interesting. But I think I'm saying it and it sounds so obvious, but I actually think it's subtle. I think it's a lot more subtle when we realize that, life is messy, and that we can be extremely skillful with that messiness. But um, yeah, it's seeing things as they are, and seeing people for who they are, and then and not trying to change others, um, as like the major goal. Like people change, people transform, but we have to create spaces for those transformations to take place. So it's like we can't have peace unless you stop saying this thing. And but if we set up better education, or we set up more restorative spaces in our communities, or more spaces for learning nonviolence, people will transform. So maybe I'm playing with these ideas of changing others and changing ourselves versus transformation, like genuine transformation from the key ideas out of spiritual practice and nonviolence.
Mm-hmm. Which is a very important difference. One is an externalized control, which is what we do with everybody and everything all the time. You follow these rules, you make it happen this way, which have a place in the world.
Yeah.
And versus the work of helping people to grow and to heal and transform is something that comes from inside them. So how do we make the space within which they have the opportunity to grow and to heal, where they feel safe? They don't feel like some of the rules that Gandhi talked about. You don't embarrass them. Don't humiliate the person that you're trying to help grow, or they end up hunkering down. And then usually, as we see often, even in the people in media, they have opportunities to grow, but then because they are mocked relentlessly by the community around them, they end up taking refuge with the only people that are willing to not mock them, which is often the worst community that they could go to, the one who also embraces this bad idea. And then they create a new identity in that space where they feel safe and accepted, because that acceptance is such an important part of human existence that we will flee the feeling of rejection no matter what. And so taking time to create a space where people can feel accepted, even though maybe they did something that is harmful, which we all have done, giving an opportunity for them to be safe and loved within the context of their actual lives, then they can grow and transform and learn from that. And it creates a safe space for them. And so how do we do that even with our worst opponents, our greatest enemy? Quite a practice.
Yeah.
Easier to say than to do.
Well, even as Gandhi said that his greatest enemy is Mahatma Gandhi. I think that's just where I am in all of this. It just keeps coming back to me of my own inadequacies of not having enough, not training myself enough regularly to make it to enact that all the time. And so, like, a good example. So it's not anything that anyone else does to me, right? It's often my own state of mind. Like if I'm getting super angry or stressed out about something, like I can't act effectively until I calm that down. And so how do I do this work? How do I incorporate that understanding into the work that I'm doing on a daily basis, where I'm teaching my prefrontal cortex not to, like to calm my amygdala faster. A good example was the other day I was at the animal shelter, and you can go in and spend time with the cats in the cat hallway. And there were these two teeny little kittens. They're maybe 8 weeks old. They're so small. And families are allowed to go in and visit because they might adopt. And there was a 7-year-old boy who was left with those kittens. And I was in another room, and I saw him playing with the kitten. He was playing, but it was inappropriate play. The kitten was not able to feel safe in what he was doing, and it upset me so much. And in order to stop it, I felt the need at that moment to, knock on the glass between us and tell him stop, and come out and sit there and, tell him, like, that's not how we treat animals, and yet I was also trained in Montessori and early childhood education. And if I had been at my best that day, I would have, been a lot gentler and say, this is how we, spend time. I think I could have done that whole situation without having made that child feel that they had, not making that child feel bad about themselves, which I'm pretty sure I did. On the other hand, I don't feel all that bad about it. Because he needed to stop doing that with the kitten, but the kitten was completely defenseless. And sometimes when we're young, somebody will say something to us that'll change us forever. But still, it could have. I do think it could have been done more nonviolently. And so that's, so I recognize that. So that happened, and then I go and I think about my day, and I think, how could I have done that differently? How could I have done that more nonviolently? Do I believe that children only learn through like learn a big lesson if somebody seems angry, um, which is conditioning? Or do I believe really, which I do, that actually we don't, we can make just as a big an impact on each other's lives and on children's lives, not using anger when they're doing something out of a lack of awareness, but doing something that helps them grow their awareness with positive reinforcement. Like that's totally possible. Like I absolutely seen it. I've done it. Um, and yet I was put in a situation that I hadn't been before where I saw a small animal being harmed. And so that was a new situation for me. And I wasn't, so my initial response was stop, getting that child to stop what he was doing. So again, like, as I think if we can learn the lessons from our behaviors and understand that I might have solved the problem for the short term, but in the long term, it could have hurt the child's feelings or made him feel ashamed, and that's not good. Like how could I have done that differently?
That's right. I personally have a specific memory. Um, I grew up and I wasn't particularly empathic. That quality of my nature took some time to develop. And I have a direct memory of I was on a field trip, grew up in California, and we went to the beach. And I remember having fun, um, somehow abusing animals. I think I was doing something that was hurtful. And the reaction of the teacher was to come over and shout at me, and understandably. And I specifically remember sort of hardening myself. I felt really ashamed. Um, I'm an autistic person, and so I already had difficulty negotiating those lines with people and understanding why things were happening in a certain way. And the reaction that I remember having was sort of doubling down on that side of my nature. Well, because I needed to not feel ashamed. It was too painful at that time to think that I had been doing something wrong. And then very specifically, there was a time when somebody in my life came along and introduced me to the feelings that other animals had. It wasn't that much longer after that, I don't think. And this entire part of my nature blossomed. And the two actions, one, they both came from the same place, the desire to protect and heal and love, even probably to protect me from myself. One was skillful, one wasn't. One hardened me against the experience of empathy. The other one introduced a space where it was safe for me to blossom and open.
Yeah.
Not to ever speak poorly of my instructors before, but it was the same thing. You can't practice for everything, but that's the skillful means make a difference. One heals, one hardens.
Yeah.
And so, not that you did anything wrong, but it's a great example of how we are like that in our lives, and why training is so important.
Yeah. Yeah. And I just hope that it also helps bring out the point of self-review in this work. That it's hard to do this perfectly, but every single action we take is an opportunity to do that kind of review. Like, what kind of world am I trying to build, and how did what I do act in contradiction to that vision, or how did it support it? What do I believe? Yeah.
Mhm.
And I think that's where nonviolence also helps me, is when I've been in conflict and thinks a conditioned part of me would feel um, ready for aggression.
Hmm.
I have this kind of mm, signpost inside of my heart that says nonviolence. So what's the nonviolent way? And I have to pause and reflect on what I'm about to do or what I'm about to say. Um, yeah, especially in long term, difficult situations. So it's a kind of a guidepost for practitioners of nonviolence, I'd say. That's what I think is really interesting about it. It's a practice, and that it can it's healing. It can prevent us from, uh, big actions that are full of karmic response, where the negative karmic response, that you've broken the relationship of among interbeing, and the kind of karmic response that you have to experience something to heal that. So
Mhm.
it just helps us to keep moving forward. Yeah.
I agree. That skill though of pausing to reflect for a moment, to create that little bit of distance from the reaction versus response, by
Yeah.
itself is its own incredibly valuable practice, and
Yeah.
worth gaining that skill. And then whatever method you interject within that, whatever value you explore, just the ability to go, well, just one moment here,
Yeah.
internally get quiet, connect, and then respond. So different.
It is. Yeah.
Mhm.
And sometimes it takes more than that, a moment, right? Sometimes it takes a day. Sometimes it the brain is tricky. It can get really fired up.
That's for sure.
And so that's where self-care comes in, to notice when you're still not seeing things clearly, and providing yourself care and rest, water, inspiration, uh, logging out of the devices, whatever the things are that are stressing you, and getting some perspective. Sleep.
So important. Sleep
Yeah.
can make the whole world different.
Yes, yes. If everybody had really good sleep, that's true.
Without digging into your personal experiences too much, unless you're wanting to, I'm curious, since you are currently in the process of this, um, separating from a culture that you've been part of, separating from a practice in a community, and reintegrating into a different way of being, what methods have you found most helpful for healing within the community that's been separated a little bit, and for reintegrating yourself into this new space and new life? Because most people watching this are going through some version of that,
Mm,
and I'm wondering what you've found particularly helpful.
yeah, I'd say I think the first thing that's helpful is the support of community, um, people who genuinely care about you. It's because my experience of having been part of this community was not one of genuine care for people, but more just care for their spiritual teacher, which um, it's, yeah. So there's, then there's big emotions that are part of that feel disappointing, and um, certain friendships change, and
Yeah,
so,
I'm
but
sorry about
having a
that.
community of people, family, friends, and just others that are uh, that are that are human, that other human beings who are expressing who don't have that same problem, that same kind of
Mhm,
sickness of only caring about a spiritual teacher instead of other human beings around them.
mhm.
Um, and gosh, I think a lot of it I had to spend almost an entire year not really talking about it or engaging with it, because it uh, caused a lot of cognitive dissonance and distress and migraine
Of
feelings.
course.
But in the time also, I started exploring music again, and
Good
which
for
is
you.
something that when I was practicing uh, my spiritual practice with devotion, I wasn't listening to music, or engaging with the arts that are out there, even the popular arts, in a way that So I'm having a lot of fun. I'd say I'm having fun just seeing other human beings being human together, and not needing to have some kind of a rigid worldview, but just kind of accepting that, having a greater sense of acceptance that everybody's on a different path, and we're all on the same path too. And um, just, yeah, I'm just sort of enjoying the idea as the unity and diversity of the human experience, in a way where I was in a space before where there was unity and uniformity, where we all believed the same things, and there were certain rules, and we all followed the same rules, and so we were creating this little separatist space in a way, which felt like which could have some value, I'd say, when we're learning a, a spiritual practice, to have space away from the world. But I definitely believe that coming back into the world space has made me stronger, better in terms of my own sense of self. I feel like, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yay! The healing continues.
Yeah, and it'll continue to take time, and that also then the idea of like how to engage with the community. Um, I feel like I have to wait until I can feel more compassion and uh, more compassion for them before I take action. If I do, if I do see someone or want to have a conversation or move forward because they haven't shown themselves open to conversation,
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah.
not just to me, but for a lot of people who have talked to them. So the fact that they're not listening to people yet means that at some point, um, we'd like them to listen, and how to, or not. I don't know. I haven't quite decided even if I want to continue to engage with them at all and just have it be one of those life lessons where it's not my problem. Um, bigger problems to deal with kind of situation. I don't know. As we get older and life becomes more complex, we start asking ourselves those questions more. Um, so whether or not it's my problem to deal with, and if I did have anything to do with it, I need to be in a better headspace for sure.
I think
Heart
that's very
space.
wise. Heart space.
Yeah, because if I can't engage in restoration with people who I don't feel compassion for, or I don't feel a willingness to forgive, and so there's there's still some work to do before that would be the most effective way forward.
I think that's very wise. Yeah, it may not be appropriate for you to engage for either your healing or for their healing, to be
Mm.
that intermediary.
Well, I'm interested in those ideas. I mean, I've studied these and ideas a lot. I've studied and practiced, and that, like, somebody had told me, well, I forgive them, and I'm like, they haven't shown any signs of recognition that they've done any harm. And so I think that uh, with nonviolence, we also have to remember that we do need to have a spine. In a way, that it's not about just being, soft and loving and everybody's nice, and the world is rainbows. And I mean, it's about holding people. There's a kind of accountability involved, and there's a truth, and there's an honesty. And so forgiveness processes and restorative processes are based in this place of um, a willingness to talk about accountability, a willingness to hear one another. And until you, and that actually takes work to even get to that space. And you can't bypass that either and just say, oh, well, I forgive them, because unless that forgiveness is the next step on your process of accountability in some way, um, it's not going to be, I don't think it's genuine. I don't think it's genuine for our own character development, self-development in this world to, unless it's coming from a place of just deep um, deep awareness. So like when a deep understanding of systems, I don't know. Sorry, John, I'm going on a little bit here. I just think that there's sometimes um, there's a burden put on people who practice nonviolence to always be forgiving, always be accommodating, uh, when actually people who practice nonviolence also need to see that we can hold each other accountable and have good communication and still be nonviolent. We can have conflict and still be nonviolent.
Absolutely true. Well, we have to have conflict because that's part of the human experience.
Yeah. There's just I just find these weird. I've done this. I've been working with Metta for a long time, and so it's just interesting. I find really wonderful practitioners, and I also hear a lot of kind of misconceptions, ideas that people who practice nonviolence are not exactly human beings either. That they've somehow just transcended all human emotion and feeling and can just forgive and forget and move on. And there's just
Oh, yeah.
and I think it's actually really a lot. Nonviolence is beautiful because we can enter into conflict and know that we will come out better.
I feel like that some of the languaging you've used, it's really worth examining because, and this is a really important part, again, for the activists and the people exploring this, for them to hear as well. So thank you for being so willing to be open about it. That the difference between transcendence and transformation. One is the idea, at least in my interpretation of the word, is to leave something behind. Transformation is more about embracing and then healing and allowing something to shift. And so the instance, the idea of forgiveness, for example, if we think about forgiveness in relationship with this little kid who was perhaps unintentionally injuring this little cat, and forgiveness is something about you. Forgiveness is something that you do for yourself. It's no longer hanging on to those parts of that experience that is damaging for you. You heal that part of yourself. And at the same time, it's actually loving for you to hold that child accountable. It would be not loving for you to push it aside because that you want to help that child engage with the world in a way that is more healthful. And maybe that kid really loved the cat and just had never held an animal before. You see those people, they've never pet a dog before. They're like, good dog, and they're petting the cat in the wrong direction or something like that, and it's just agitating, but they don't know. And so, and this is the easy example. It's different than genocide, right? But it's all the same people that we go and we look at the quality of forgiveness, of acceptance, of healing ourselves. I feel like, and in Chinese, there's terminology for each of these, and so it's a little bit easier, probably in Sanskrit as well. And these ideas that healing for ourselves, I forgive that child so that I'm not hanging on to resentment, hanging on to those things that are injurious for me. They're kinds of poisons. Versus I'm going to hold that child accountable. And for that cat as well, maybe it's a kind of wisdom, if that cat was thinking about it at all, to now avoid that child, because in its experience, it recognizes maybe that kid might hurt me. And that's what's also its own kind of wisdom. Even if it's not hanging on to resentment, it hides at the right time so that kid doesn't come by and pick it up. And I feel like in each of these situations, there's a kind of wisdom and a kind of right action, to use this Buddhist terminology, in that moment to be the most loving and most wise that we can work with, and to work with this kind of innocent ignorance that all humans seem to walk around with. And we're all kind of blundering around. And this idea of conflict is just because oftentimes we're blundering into each other, sometimes with sharp objects. And now we have to heal the damage that's happened. And again, like Gandhi says, to do it without shame, so that the person, like I did, goes, and then decides that I don't ever want to feel this way again. I'm going to go further in this direction of being injurious because I feel better over here, because over here they accept me for that. And in fact, it's actually good action. It's righteous action. it's the best thing I could do to injure these people, to hurt that cat, to use a non-inflammatory example. And that's a hard line to walk, but it definitely starts with this self-healing and the ability to separate and to see things more clearly rather than to be caught up in the tidal wave of feeling about it.
And I love that. I love that you're also bringing out again like a personal practice. It's hard. It's really hard to avoid that when we're talking about nonviolence. Again, we're not talking about. I love that idea of sitting with the action and of forgiveness as a practice.
Mm-hmm.
Letting it go, thinking about
So you're not poisoning yourself in the very least.
Yeah, definitely. That's actually how I became interested in this work too. I was in the Peace Corps and been in West Africa, and my mom had sent me a DVD while I was there. And it was about the Truth and Reconciliation Commission in South Africa. So I was first learned about this forgiveness process. And I remember the one of the producers, and because I was watching like every little bit of it I could after it was over, and I was watching these follow-up videos, and the producer said she wanted to make a film that helped Americans to understand that a Truth and Reconciliation Commission happened, that it's a process that exists. That's the only reason. And so you have, when you brought up genocide, you have that these crimes against humanity and during apartheid, and the people in South Africa came together under the wise spiritual leadership of Desmond Tutu and Nelson Mandela, and they created these Truth and Reconciliation Commissions to
Amazing.
Talk about. It had both a spiritual side and a political side. People were granted amnesty if they told the truth of what they did, so that other people can hear what happened to their family members, as long as it wasn't overly done. Like there were some crimes that were punished because they were so deeply cruel and unkind, but that everybody was caught up in the violence of apartheid, and so to bring truth to families, what happened to their children, what happened to their family members. But also, it was, so there was amnesty, and then there was also forgiveness, where people would then also say, I forgive you for what you've done. So even on a larger political scale, we can bring these simple ideas that we practice in our daily life all the time, to political solutions, to try to create better bridges and to create more whole societies.
So beautiful. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Are there any lingering thoughts that you have, or questions I should have asked you?
New lingering thoughts or questions? No, I've just enjoyed where this conversation has gone.
I'm very grateful for you.
Yeah. Nice. I'm grateful for you. Yeah, thanks for talking, and thanks for all the work you're doing to help share nonviolence with your audience.
Yeah, it's some of the most important work. I feel like, just as I was when I was younger, I didn't know it was a possibility because it's not introduced to us. This is what the world is like. We're born bad. We have to have iron grips around everything, sharp edges and barbed wire to make sure that humans don't destroy each other. And there's no possibility for healing. There's only possibility for retribution and control. And that story, as Michael will tell us, we need a new story, so that there's a possibility for growth. Because if we don't imagine something better for ourselves, then we can't find our way there. So whether it's in the possibility of a board game, links down below, or people out there sharing the opportunity of, and the good work being done by people all over the place, as you explore in your podcast, I feel like there's so much hope and possibility, because what we're doing isn't something new. It's a restoration of a deeper part of our nature.
Yeah.
And all we do is keep going in further. And how beautiful that there's thousands of methods out there, uncounted methods out there, and ways for us to heal our community, heal ourselves, heal our small relationships, and to reach out and hold hands and help each other grow. I am so appreciative of people like you leading the way.
Well, thanks so much for having me.
Yeah. My pleasure. And everybody who's interested, please again, check down below, visit the Metta website, listen to the podcast. There's so many resources out there that have been created by Stephanie that if we access them, we can all grow and at least find our way into the broader community of nonviolence and peace work. And we all appreciate you. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us, and a deep thank you to Stephanie Van Hook for sharing her clarity, authenticity, and dedication to the practice of nonviolence. Conversations like this remind us that real change begins in the quiet places, and how we listen, how we respond, and how we care for one another and ourselves, moment by moment. If you'd like to explore more, you can find us on YouTube at Peaceful Voices Podcast. And you're always welcome to support this work through Patreon under John Blue. Until next time, take a breath, slow things down, and see if you can meet yourself with just a little more patience and kindness.